Hello and welcome to the CogniTutor instructor training video for the LearnSpeed system. My name is Zach. I'm LearnSpeed's lead support and training specialist, and I will be showing you around the system today. But before we get into LearnSpeed itself, let me tell you a little bit about how you're going to set your account up. So it starts with an email from the CogniTutor administration. It'll look something like this. So you can open up that email and it'll say you've been invited to join LearnSpeed, and there's going to be a setup link here in this email. So you can click on that setup link and set up your username and password. So once you have those two things in place and you've activated your account, you can log in from learnspeed.com/login. So you can just type in your username and password and go ahead and hit the login button. Okay, so we're in the Home tab of LearnSpeed, and this is what you're going to see when you first log in. I'll go over the Home tab widgets as they pertain to your responsibilities in just a moment, but first I want to show you the My Account link here at the top of the page. And this brings you to the My Account page. Now you can update your contact information here, phone number, email address, you can reset your password, but one really important thing that you can do here is add and update your home address. And as you can see, I don't even have my home address here. It's really important that at least the zip code goes in the zip code field because the CogniTutor administrators use that zip code to locate you relative to the students. So if your zip code isn't in here, you won't show up in any of those location searches at all. And if your zip code is out of date, you may be getting the wrong pay rate based on a travel bonus that really isn't accurate. So it's really important that if you do move, that you update at the very least your zip code. So let's start with your first responsibility within LearnSpeed. What happens when you're matched with a student? Now you're going to get an automatic email that gives you a little bit of the student's details. The student's name, the guardian's name, some basic notes about that student. But there's going to be a lot more information here within the system that you are required to check. So when you do get that email, log into LearnSpeed and find your student. If you know your student's name, you can type it into the account search bar. So I have a student named Samuel, so I can just type in Samuel's name here, and his name will pop up. I can click on it to go to his account page. You can also go through the People tab here at the top, but I find the account search bar is a little faster. So here in his account page, we've got Samuel's account information, which will likely be pretty sparse, but also his parent Paul's account information, phone number, email address, that sort of thing. So that's all visible here from the student's account too. Below that account information, I can see all of the sessions that have been logged. This is a new student, so far no sessions, as well as the scheduled calendar, but we'll get into that in just a second. The thing that you really need to check is the Work Orders tab. Now, a work order is a document that the administration is going to write up to you with important details that you need to know before you start on your first session. To take a look at the details of a work order, you can just roll your mouse over the eye icon here, and you'll see the concerns, history, objectives, scheduling, and tutoring dates. Any notes that the administration thinks are important are going to be here in this work order. Now, what if you have a student who's working for a larger nonprofit? The information is going to be in a slightly different place. For example, my nonprofit student, Nora, the client information is going to be the actual nonprofit that Nora is associated with, so we can mostly ignore that. However, Nora's guardian's information, name, phone number, and again, address, that sort of thing, are going to be either in the account note or associated with Nora's student account. So it's always going to be visible here, but if you're working with a nonprofit or other large organizational student, don't look to the actual client information. Look instead at the student's information or at the account note. The work order, of course, is going to be in the same place. Whether your student is private or working with a larger organization, after you've looked at the work order and you've gotten all the information you need to call the parent or the student and introduce yourself. Part of this phone call is finalizing a schedule and location. Once you've done that, it's up to you to get your schedule on the calendar. All of this is going to happen on the Calendar tab, so let's check that out now. This is the main Calendar tab. You may be familiar with it if you've used other calendar apps like Google Calendar or iCal. Our default view is the week view, but we also have a month view and a day view. Now the column view is really more used for administrators, so don't worry too much about that. You can page from screen to screen with these arrow buttons. You can go to any date you like by clicking that Go To button, and you can always head back to today's date by clicking the Today button. In the bottom left corner on this gray sidebar here, there are a bunch of these viewing options. When you first create your account, they're all going to be disabled, but I strongly suggest you enable at least a couple of these to get the most out of the calendar. In particular, I would suggest enabling event names, certainly weekends if you work on weekends, locations, subjects, and then I also like highlight today. It places a blue bar over today's date and helps me orient myself. Okay, on to scheduling on the calendar. So let's say that we've set up a schedule for Tuesdays and Thursdays for Samuel. I'm going to page to next week to find next Tuesday and click on the 2 p.m. time slot. That's when our sessions are going to happen. When I click on a blank space on the calendar, up pops the Add Event form. Now there's a lot here. Some of this you aren't going to use. Let me talk to you about the bare bones things that you need for a one-time session. First off, it's important that you schedule on your calendar. You'll notice how I'm here in the My Calendar tab and I see the CogniTutor name. You should see your name here on the left-hand sidebar. That's what you want. Secondly, you want to make sure that all of the logistical details are set. Right now I've got a 1.5 hour session here from 2 to 3:30. That looks good. If you'd like to change the duration, you're welcome to do that here. Finally, we need to add the student as an attendee. Now, simply adding the student's name in the event name isn't enough. LearnSpeed needs to understand that this student's account is connected with this event, and that way they'll receive reminders and you'll be prompted to enter your session report. So here's how to add that student. Down here in this gray box, you'll click the Add Attendee button. Then start typing in your student's name. They'll show up in the list here, you'll click on that, and they'll be added to the event. So this is actually all you need for a really bare bones event. Just your calendar, the student as an attendee, making sure all of the logistical details are set, and you're good to go. But I think there's a lot more that can be done with a calendar to help you keep abreast of your schedule and to help you down the road when you log your sessions. So let's talk about some of those. In particular, these options on the right-hand side will show up in your calendar and pre-populate in your session reports. So I strongly suggest adding these to all of your sessions. Your location, the subject, and the session type can all be pre-scheduled. If you're not sure which session type to use, that's just fine. You can go ahead and leave this blank. The administration will have pre-selected a session type for your student, so it'll pop up correctly when you go to log your session. I'll leave this blank this time. Now this is more like it for a one-time session. I'll go ahead and hit save, and the session is down on the calendar. But of course, most of the time you won't be scheduling one-time sessions. You'll be scheduling every week, a recurring series. So let me show you how to do that. Just as before, you'll click on the time slot of the time that you want to start. You'll fill in the student's name in the attendee. You might even put the location or subject. And then what you'll want to do is check this recurring checkbox. And a new window will pop up into the form. By default, we have every week, although we do support some other recurring options. I think every week is probably going to be the most useful for you. If the session's recurring just once a week on the day you selected, like this Tuesday, you don't have to check the Tuesday box or anything. But if you have a session that recurs more than once a week, you can check the boxes. For example, my session with Samuel is going to be Tuesday and Thursday. So I'll check Tuesday and Thursday to let LearnSpeed know this is twice a week. Now you have a choice. You can either select the number of sessions to recur until, or a date to stop the recurring series. For most sessions, I imagine a date makes sense, but there are some cases in which you know exactly how many sessions you're going to be working with the student. In that case, you can just fill that number in. Here, I'll go ahead and put until the end of the school year. Call that the middle of June. For now, I think it looks good. I'm going to hit save. Inevitably, you're also going to want to make changes to your schedule. So let me show you a couple of quick ways to do that. If you accidentally schedule a one-time session and you meant to make it a recurring series, it's easy to turn that one-time session into a recurring series. Just click on the session and hit that Make Series button. From there, you can edit the dates and all of the other information about the series by hitting this Edit Series box. The form here looks a little bit different, but all of the same information is there. The days of the week, the number and date, even the subject and session type are all here. If you want to make a change to one scheduled session, whether it's one time or part of a larger recurring series, it's also very easy. You can click on that event, and click Edit Single. That'll let you change just this one event. You can change the subject, the location, heck, you can even change the duration if you want, and then you'll just hit Save. If all you're doing is rescheduling an event to another day or time, it's actually even easier than that. We have a nifty click and drag function. So let's say Samuel needs to reschedule his Thursday session for just half an hour later. So once I've confirmed that that's going to be the change, I go ahead and click and drag to the later time slot, let go, and it's been rescheduled. Now this only affects the one session. So if I page to next week, he's still at the 4 to 5:30 time slot for that week. This is just the single session. So what if you want to make changes to all of the sessions going forward, not just to a single session? Well, that's easy. As you may have guessed, click on the event, and then click Edit Series. Now, Edit Series only affects the event that you've clicked and all of the events forward in that series. So don't worry about changing any events that have already happened. Let's say Samuel likes that later time slot, the 4:30 to 6 o'clock. That's just fine with me, so I'll go ahead and shift this entire series from 4 to 4:30 and save. And every event is updated going forward. Finally, you might want to delete something from the calendar when you've canceled it, or even delete all sessions going forward if a student is no longer working with you. That's pretty easy too. If you click on an event, you'll see the Delete Event option to delete the single event, and the Delete Future option to delete all events in the future. Delete Series is a little dangerous here. This button actually deletes all of the events in a recurring series, even the past events. So as a general rule, I'd stay away from this unless you know you made an entire mistake for a series and you want to wipe it all out and start from scratch. A couple quick reminders for scheduling. First, it's important that you schedule from the main calendar tab on your calendar. When you click on the calendar to schedule an event, it should show your name in the calendar field, not the student. Secondly, it's equally important that you add the student as an attendee. Again, naming the event after the student just isn't enough. You're not going to be prompted to enter your session report and, well, you won't get paid for the session in that case. The final note is this. Because you've already added the student as an attendee, this event exists both on your calendar and on the student's calendar. There's absolutely no reason to double schedule this on the student's calendar. So what happens next? That's when you attend that session and take notes during the session so that you can fill out a great session report later. Once you're back from the session, log back into LearnSpeed, go to the Home tab, and you'll notice that you have a session needing report. LearnSpeed tracks these reports for you, so any session that has happened that you haven't written pops up here on this widget. So when the list is empty, you know you're up to date. CogniTutor has a very strict 24-hour policy on these sessions. Once that 24 hours is up, you'll receive an email reminding you, and it'll turn red. But try your hardest not to make that happen. These session reports contain important feedback for the student and parent, and the administration can't bill the session. You can't get paid until you write this session report. So it's very important that you get these on time, under 24 hours. To log a session from the Home tab, just click this plus session button, and it'll bring you to a blue form. A lot of this information is going to be pre-populated for you. The length of the session, date and time, subject, location, all of that should be in. The session type may be pre-populated, but if it's not, that's not a big deal. Just click the drop-down arrow and pick the option from the list. Now, if there's more than one option in the list, stop. Do not log the session right now. This session type affects billing and it also affects your pay, so it's important that you get it right the first time, and it's not your job to make a decision about what the proper session type is. So instead of logging the session, just put it aside and contact the administration. Let them know that there's more than one session type and they should restrict that session type for the student so that you only have one choice. And they'll let you know when you can come back and log the session properly. Since there's only one option in the list, I can confidently select this one. The X turns to a check, and I can move on. In these sessions, you have an opportunity to rate the student on the student's preparedness, engagement, and progress. You should also indicate if you assigned homework. If you did assign homework, you should indicate what that homework was in your note. Speaking of notes, as soon as I populated the session type, you may have noticed that the client note pops up with a couple of prompts. Your session goals, and a detailed description of what happened during the session. These are the two items that need to be in every session report. If you have any questions about what constitutes a good note in a session report, please ask the CogniTutor administration. There's one more thing to note before we save this session and submit it for approval, and that's the requires attention checkbox here in the middle of the left-hand column. Most of the time your session goes perfectly well, and there's nothing special that the administration needs to be aware of for the session. But if the student has been consistently unprepared or consistently had low engagement, or perhaps is not on track in terms of their progress, any of a myriad of things, if you would like to contact the administration, flag this session to get their attention, you can just check this requires attention checkbox. And if you do that, it's a really good idea to explain what requires attention here in the admin note. But the admin note isn't visible to the client or student, it just goes to the administration. So here you can type in whatever you need the administration to know, even if it's a little bit private or you don't want the client and student to see. Whatever the reason, add it to the admin note. Once you've added the notes and ratings and you've checked that the logistical details are all in order, just hit save, and that will submit your session for approval. As I said before, once the queue is empty, you're up to date. And that's about it for your core workflow within LearnSpeed. There's only one more thing to note here, and that's tasks. Tasks, as the name implies, are time-sensitive to-do items that the administration from time to time might assign to you. When a task becomes active, it'll show up here in the Home tab, and it'll send you an email telling you a little bit about the task. A task will probably look about like this. Already you can see most of the information for the task. Who it's from, the subject, if there is one, the topic, the student, if there's a student linked to this task, the due date, which is optional, and of course the active date. The text of the task is here. If it's hard to read, you can always roll your mouse over the eye. It's a little easier here in the pop-up. If a due date has been set and the due date comes due, it'll turn red in LearnSpeed and send you another email to remind you, just like an overdue session report. And of course, once you've completed the task, to let the person who assigned you the task know that you've completed it, you can hit the complete button. Optionally, you can add a note, and if you'd like to adjust the time it was completed, you can, and then just hit save. And that's it. Pretty easy overall to respond to a task. And that's about it for the basics of LearnSpeed. Now obviously we didn't cover every feature. We didn't go through every tab or look at every function. But what you know now is all you need to perform your basic responsibilities within LearnSpeed. So welcome aboard, and thanks for watching.